I cook a product that's designed to help make people healthier, and then I go home and eat potato chips and drink beer at night, right? So I have, there's a strong disconnect. There's a compartmentalization of my behaviors. I've been a very secretive eater in my life because, even in non-vegan and non-plant-based circles, to eat the way that I would eat is viewed as unhealthy. So you eat secretly.
Hey, friends and listeners of the Switch for Good podcast. Yep, that's you. I have some really exciting news. Dotsie and I have started a Switch for Good podcast Facebook group. We created it so we can build a community of fans that will help us improve the show and deliver on the topics that you want to learn more about. So we want to hear what your favorite content is, what you want more of, and what you want less of. And if you like the length of the show, Dotsie and I are always talking about the length of the show, right, Dotsie?
Yes.
We want to tailor our show around the needs and desires of our incredible listeners, almost 500,000 of you. And it's really simple to join. Just go to our Switch for Good Facebook page. That's Switch, the number 4, and then Good. And then click on groups. And there we are, the Switch for Good podcast chat. You can post directly in the group, share ideas, talk to other listeners, and connect with like-minded folks. So go, run, join our Facebook group and tell us what you want. Hey, everybody, and hi, Dotsie.
Hi.
I wanted to share something with you all that it was kind of a dilemma, and I'm sure that I think we can all probably relate. But I woke up this morning not feeling very good. And I knew why. It was because I'd stayed up too late last night watching the series, which happens to be the morning show series. I don't know. Have you seen it, Dotsie?
I haven't.
And I'd also eaten too late at night. And I knew when I was doing it, staying up too late and eating too late, that in the morning that I would regret it. But in that moment, I was totally happy doing it, even though I was thinking, you're probably going to regret it. But there's this little part of me going, no, maybe you won't. Maybe it's all good. And when I woke up, of course, I didn't feel that great. I just got on with it, as you do. And I went and worked out, even though I whined like crazy. And I felt better after working out, but not really as good as if I had kept with what I knew was just better for me all around, which was going to bed before 10 and not eating within half an hour before turning on the light. And the irony is that I'm reading this book called Dopamine Nation, which is all about how we're addicted to all sorts of these dopamine hits, like watching TV and eating, and how we pursue pleasure and avoid pain. And in the end, the main premise of the book is that our relentless pursuit of pleasure ends up causing us more pain. And so I don't really have any words of wisdom here, except for I just wanted to share that I found it especially interesting that even while I'm reading this book this week, I still got hijacked by the lure of immediate pleasure over the feeling, the knowledge would feel better in the long run. And I guess I'm just human, but Dotsie, I want to know your thoughts about that. And I know in our interview today, we're going to talk with Chef Dell, and he's going to talk a little bit about that too, his own personal experience.
Yeah. Well, dopamine's powerful. It's one of our transmitters, and our body makes it, and then our nervous system uses it to send messages. And I think it's so powerful because it affects our reward center, right? It can provide this intense feeling of reward. Dopamine is what happens, or what is produced, I guess you'd say, when people are addicted to anything. And social media is one of those things, right? You're seeking that feeling, right? You want that reward, and that feeling that rushes over you is what you keep going back for.
But the thing is that I know that, okay, so here's how dopamine works, is that you get, when you think about, for example, watching a TV show, because Ian said, do you want to do a crossword? Or do you want to watch an episode of morning show? And so the thinking of the morning show gave me probably a higher dopamine spike than the crossword. Yeah. And then what happens is the dopamine spike, it goes down, because now you've gotten a little taste, but now they need you to go get it. So then because you have a low dopamine at that moment, you need to turn on the TV and watch the morning show to get the dopamine spike again. So it's kind of a driver too.
Yeah.
It gives you a tease, and then unless you fulfill it, you kind of feel low. So it's just, you're so right. We all chase it. And overall, I know that I'm happier having less of a dopamine high in the immediate. Overall, I'm happier, but I guess it's just our human biology.
I think so. I think it's pretty hard to turn off that desire for that feeling of reward. And sometimes we get it other ways, right? Like after sex or after winning a race or, but then what do? We seek that again, and we just seek that feeling. So we don't necessarily do it in the same way. And last night it was like, totally. a good, show and some food. And it was just, you saw it. And then we pay a bit, but I think that is also part of just the human condition and being human and being you. And the fact that you're recognizing it as everything. That's where it's at.
And you know what?
Girl.
And I know I just have to, I did what I needed to do, which is I went and worked out and I showed up for this show. I feel much better, by the way.
Yeah, thanks for showing up.
And so anyway, and let's keep doing what we got to do. I want to introduce our guest today, who is I think it's different from most of our shows, right, Dotsie? So people are going to really get a kick out of this one.
Yeah, let's do it.
Chef Del Sroufe is the author of 4 Forks Over Knives and China Study cookbooks, as well as the book Better Than Vegan, 101 Favorite Low-Fat Plant-Based Recipes That Helped Me Lose Over 200 Pounds. He is the culinary specialist at the T. Colin Campbell Center for Nutrition Studies, where he teaches classes and develops these delicious recipes. He also has a vegan support group on Facebook called Chef Del's Diet Days that you should check out if you want to eat healthier, cook more, or lose some weight. He has a 6-week class coming up on batch cooking that I know Dotsie has her eye on. Chef Del was the co-owner with Dr. Pam Popper and executive chef at Wellness Forum Foods, a plant-based meal delivery and catering service in Columbus, Ohio. He also used to own his own bakery shop called Del's Bread. On an added note, he does his daily Wordle, which actually my sister just got my husband and I into. And I have to say, Del, you're very good at it. We're excited to learn how to become better cooks in our discussion with Chef Del today. And maybe I'll learn a little bit more about doing better on Wordle. Welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me. I have to say this, the days that you see me post on Wordle, I did well. If I don't get it, I don't share it.
Dotsie, do you know what we're talking about?
Yes, I do, ma'am. I looked it up and I think Kirk and I are going to join. So it's like 5-letter words and you have 5 shots at guessing it, right?
Yeah. And
okay.
It's addicting.
Well, my sister keeps sending me stuff, and she was visiting last week, and my husband and I love crosswords. So she was sure that we'd get into it, and we had a lot of fun. So anyway, Wordle, Wordle, for those of you, and just put in Wordle New York Times and it will come up. So, all right, Chef Del, back to you. So your passion for cooking began when you were about 8 years old. Can you tell us a little bit about what inspired you at that age to get in the kitchen?
Yeah, I think it happened sort of out of necessity. My mother and father got divorced when I was 7 years old. And on the weekends, I'd go and stay with my dad, who did not yet know how to cook. So he had a mother who was an amazing cook. So he was used to really good food. And we kind of learned to cook together. We started off by cooking pancakes from the back of the Bisquick box and the coffee cake, and learning how to do I learned how not to over mix my pancakes. My uncle would yell at me if I did, and all of that kind of stuff. And then we eventually graduated onto more intense recipes. And by the time I was 11, 12 years old, I surprised my mom one day. She came home and I had cooked dinner. And she just about fainted, and she was overjoyed. And then, of course, I became the family cook a lot of the time. But that's how it kind of got started.
What kind of stuff did you cook back then?
Well, back then it was everything from, and I've been on a diet since I was 8 years old. So we were taking the skin off of chicken and broiling it. And my mom made, I don't know if you remember the cabbage soup diet. We did one of those. That was back in 1974 or 5. So we were making cabbage soup, which I never, ever, ever want to eat again. But a lot of things like that. And then my mother was an excellent baker. So there was banana bread and her pumpkin bread. I've never had a pumpkin bread as good as hers. But she was a very adventurous cook, and so my dad became one. Beef stew and casseroles. He had this baked bean casserole that had sausage and bacon and then a layer of cornbread on top of it.
Oh my God.
Yeah,
You're making everybody hungry.
I know, it doesn't sound like diet food though, does it? But we ate very well, and of course my weight was like right along with it.
I was just gonna say, it sounds like the cooking. You had the cooking genes. It was in your DNA. But I'm curious: is that first spark you felt? Was it something specific that you made? Was it a soup? Was it something you baked, or was it that first dinner that you made for your mom?
I think it was the first dinner for mom, and seeing the joy on her face. So I'm kind of a people pleaser, but my mom worked a full-time job and would come home and cook us dinner. So to be able to do that for her, and I just lost oh God, I'll get emotional. I just lost my mom last June and missed those days so much. But just being able to do that for her made me want to do it more.
Yeah.
And you said you mentioned that you've been on a diet since you were a kid. Was that one of the reasons that you are such a renowned chef in the low-fat plant-based world? Because in case our listeners and viewers don't know, is that Forks Over Knives and the China study, they advocate for a low-fat, whole food, plant-based diet.
Yeah, when I went to, I closed my bakery in 2001, and it was a vegan bakery, but it was the worst thing I could have done. I gained 200 pounds through that period. I left there and I was doing some product for the Wellness Forum at that time. And eventually in 2006, she bought my business. I had a meal delivery business. She bought it and built me a kitchen and moved me in there. And I remember when she said to me, she goes, I want you to come on board with us and help us do what we do, but you got to get the oil out of your food. I remember that very specifically because that was the beginning of really getting the fat out of the food and the beginning of me losing weight again, to get that weight off. And so I did, and we did. And the funny thing is my meal delivery customers didn't even notice the difference with the no oil cooking.
We're going to talk about that because I know our listeners and viewers want to hear tips on that. So we're going to pick your brain a little bit about tips, but when did your plant-based journey begin?
It probably started, I opened the bakery in 1997. I actually started cooking, my first cooking job was 1989 in a vegetarian kitchen. So I started cooking then. By the time I left there, I'd become vegan and converted half of our restaurant to vegan recipes. So that went with me. And then the next step was coming in contact with Dr. Popper and beginning to develop product for her company. We have 45 in-the-bag mixes of like cornbread mix and sausage mixes and things like that, soup mixes. They were all whole food, plant-based, low-fat, oil-free mixes. So I started developing those for her, and then as you're developing those, for me, the most important thing was it had to taste good, right? So, you begin to see that you can create taste without throwing fat all over it. And that sort of was the beginning. So 1999, I developed the first product for her, and then again by 2006, I became a member of the Wellness Forum, took our class on health and wellness, and started changing my own relationship with food. And I have to say, and we can talk about it more and all you want, I'm very honest about it. It was the beginning of the struggle, and the struggle still continues. I lost 200 pounds, and I almost gained it all back after I left the Wellness Forum and went home and sat still and wondered what to do with the rest of my life, And so there's a big thing that goes on, and a lot of conversations that we have in my weight loss group about knowing the diet is one thing, but having the headspace to get it right is another. That was a longer answer than you wanted, but I'm sticking to it.
Yeah, that's fantastic. We talk about a lot of just body issues, body image, body processes, eating. We both Alexandra and I both suffered from eating disorders, bulimia and anorexia. So it's a common theme in the podcast. And because you dove into it, I, I think this is the perfect time to traverse that. When you became the chef at the vegetarian restaurant, were you already veg or vegan? Let's just talk real quick about that. Why?
Yeah.
Why did you become?
I was in business school at Ohio State University and hating it. And I knew that I needed to get a job that would give me management experience. And one of my best friends was working at King Avenue as the manager, and he and the owner and I sat down one day and they hired me. And believe it or not, I made about $6 an hour as an assistant manager there. But I fell in love. I fell in love with the food and the people, and it was an old 60s style coffee house. And so there was a lot of love and a lot of creativity and a lot of, we had art on the walls every week. We had musicians on the stage every Friday night. So this whole environment kind of embraced me, and there I was. And that was the beginning of my journey, though not the end of my weight loss story, because again, that food was not healthy. We assumed vegetarian was healthy back then, that, eggs and cheese and milk and dairy were good for you, right? But, I bought Dean Ornish's Eat More, Weigh Less book about 4 years after I started at King Avenue, and started seeing him cooking all this low-fat food and started thinking a little bit differently. But I set the seed in motion, but that was just the very beginning of all of that kind of a thought about how to cook differently and eat differently.
How did those days in the early 90s, the low-fat, fat-free days of Snackwells, and that you can eat all you want as long as it's low-fat, fat-free, and that just made me eat more. I don't know about you. Right. How did you traverse through those periods of time, and talk to us about fat?
I did well and badly and poorly and well, and it was a mixed bag, because like you, I think when I see Entenmann's, have you ever heard of Entenmann's Bakery?
Oh yeah.
Oh, right. That coffee cake, there's nothing better than an Entenmann's fat-free. It's fat-free, but it's packed full of sugar and calories and white flour, right? So you think fat-free, and it gives the mind permission to do it. And to do it all. And I'm a binge eater. I'm notorious. In my family, we know. And I come from a family of binge eaters, where large quantities of food. So you give me permission on something like a fat-free item like an Entenmann's coffee cake, and off I go. Right? So it's a fraught relationship, and then the food industry is I'm sorry, it's a wicked, evil place, in my opinion. The things that they do to market to us about food is full of lies and mistruths and half-truths, and it's not well-intended. The fat-free Entenmann's is not a well-intended product. It's designed to sell more Entenmann's coffee cake. That's a little more political than maybe you wanted, I don't know, but...
No, we talk about the food industry because Switch for Good deals with a lot of the food industry and the...
Well, I saw the section on food justice, which is something that we're starting to look at the CNS. So there's a lot of new conversations going on around that, and communities of color and disenfranchised communities that are people like me who are plummeted with advertising. Right now, I was lucky enough to reach out and have Dr. Pam Popper reach out to me and to educate me very differently. But a lot of people don't have that fortune. There are people who are still the best choices they have is the corner store with potato chips and quickie hot dogs and processed foods that don't do anybody any good.
Food deserts, and so it's very hard to get that fresh whole food. It's very hard to get whole food.
Yeah.
A lot of times we compartmentalize our health. It's like our spiritual health, and our mental health, our actual physical health, and I know from my history and my background with food and disordered eating, it was the disconnection of all of those that kept driving me towards starving myself and then eventually binging and purging. Do you feel like that triad, that disconnection and compartmentalization of our health is something that you have experienced? And if so, I want to hear more. And if not, then just totally course correct, because I want to learn your journey.
Well,
food addiction.
You hit a big nail on the head, because it's exactly kind of what happens. So you have out here, I have this conversation about health and wellness. And, I've talked a lot about this, the fact that I cook a product that's designed to help make people healthier, and then I go home and eat potato chips and drink beer at night, right? So there's a strong disconnect. There's a compartmentalization of my behaviors. I've been a very secretive eater in my life because, even in non-vegan and non-plant-based circles, to eat the way that I would eat is viewed as unhealthy. So you eat secretly. And that's part of why I created the diet group that I created, because I want to be out front about my struggle and to say, hey, I know what a whole food plant-based diet is, and I still struggle with the food choices that I make, and my brain is trying to get wrapped around a different way of thinking. So yeah, it's very compartmentalized and it's very disordered, in the sense that you can have a sense of knowledge about what is the right way to eat and how to eat it. But man, to get your emotions in line with your behaviors and all of that is a whole different story.
And that's key, isn't it? It's not really about the food. Although you are around food. So when you had your bakery, was the weight gain because of stress and maybe some personal struggles, or was it because you just were eating badly?
I think I don't recommend to anyone that you start a business the way that I did. I took $27,000, some of it borrowed, and I opened a bakery with that. That's no money, right? You're told to have 6 months of income set aside. I had none. So I immediately took my entire life's history of eating and then the stress of opening a business and working 80 to 100 hours a week,
Oh, wow.
and throwing myself into that, so that in the morning, my first food contact was me going into work and making coffee and then making a batch of scones. And of course, what was I going to eat? There were scones right there, and they were smelled good, and they were right out of the oven. So having all of that accessible, and then I'm having the stress of creating a business was just, in a way, it was a nightmare. I mean, I would never ever do that again if I could go back and undo it. I'm glad it led me to where I am now. In a sense, I would never have met Dr. Popper. She came into my bakery looking for help on making some products. I would never have met her and would never have had the opportunity. I might still be vegetarian or vegan, but still not knowing anything about a whole food plant-based diet. And I'm 61 now. So what would my health look like if I weren't even vegan, if I weren't vegetarian? Right? I think about that a lot.
I think it's great that you're being honest and talking about it. And I hope that you're finding that there's only positives to that, or if there are any negatives, they far, far outweigh the positives of being yourself, authentic, and sharing with people your vulnerabilities.
I think that it's kind of a responsibility that I feel to help others to because I'm selling food to people. I've been doing that for a long time. So it seems that it's my responsibility to at least let them know what they're getting themselves into and to be as honest as possible. So yeah, I feel a responsibility for that, and I feel lucky too that I get to do this, that I get to be. And if you join my weight loss group, some people don't want to join it. It's a trigger for people, but you get to see this non-judgmental environment where we support each other and we work together, and that's a special place because you don't get that. I have people in my group who don't have any support from their real life, from their family, from their friends, from their spouses, from work. So the world is kind of antagonistic to what they're trying to do, and then they're trying to negotiate that. I have cancer survivors who are just a year later getting their spouses on board and their family on board because it's about survival.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's crazy.
I think, obviously, well, weight gain, weight loss, whatever it is, it's never really about the food. Kind of like Lance Armstrong said, it's not really about the bike. It seems like counterintuitive. No, it is, but it's not. But you teach classes now. Do you bring this aspect into the classes? What you've learned and what you're sharing with us, and
yeah,
how do people react? Yeah.
People when they're looking for my classes, it's interesting because I've had people who are vegan but not yet adopting the whole food plant-based diet come into a class because aren't that many vegan cooking instructors around. And so when you start showing them this no oil cooking, right? When you start making a stir fry and there's no oil, and they're kind of like, why do you do that? And it opens up a line of questioning.
Yeah.
And that's your opportunity. That's your door, right? And then even in my own social circles, when I'm with friends, the opportunity to teach is the same. So I'm showing up at, I have an international dinner club of friends I went to high school with. We've been doing this for 25, 30 years now. And so I show up with these whole food plant-based dishes, and then the questions come. And just recently, I don't know if you'll see this or not, but one of my closest friends who, big meat eater, type 2 diabetic, big meat eater, medications, getting ready to have eye surgery because of the diabetes, right? And I found my door. I found the end to educate and say, there's another route that you can go. There's another route that you can go. And he was open to it because he's scared now. So you look for these teachable opportunities in the classroom or outside of the classroom. And otherwise, because, I have family members that I'm not allowed to talk to. I cannot talk to them about what my diet is or anything. I have a friend who's got migraines and she's morbidly obese, and I can't talk to her about diet. Doesn't want to hear it.
Yeah. Got to have an open heart and an open mind. And yeah. So speaking of oil, we know a lot of people say, what's wrong with oil? Like olive oil is supposed to be so healthy, and it's in the Mediterranean diet. It's so delicious. And I'm not no oil, but I tend to do low, and we'll do some fresh olive oil drizzled on my salad. But what we definitely know is heating oil is when the bad news starts to come in. One being the oxidization of the fatty acids. That's, just one of the issues. And especially if you reheat the same oil. So I want to know, because I still reach for the olive oil sometimes when I'm going to start a stir fry.
Yeah.
And it's like, it's such a habit for people, any type of oil doesn't matter. So I've heard veggie broth, but your tricks and tips on cooking without any kind of oil, and how people are possibly not even noticing that you're not cooking with oil, which I love, which means that you can obviously do it healthfully if they're not even noticing that it's not in there.
Yeah. It's interesting when you, when you start a cooking in front of people and they start seeing that, there's a surprise. It's sort of like, why isn't it burning?
Right.
How are you not burning the food? So, again, we're starting a conversation about how this is happening. And then the conversation was, well, why no oil? And you mentioned one thing about heating oil, but, there's a lot of research that shows now that when you eat oil, it contributes to the atherosclerotic plaque the same way that dairy does or saturated fats do, right? So when we look at like the Mediterranean diet, of which there is no one Mediterranean diet, when we start looking at those diets, I always refer people to the best examples. The people in the blue zones don't eat a lot of oil. And if they do, the preponderance, the totality of their diet is so good that it makes a big difference, because it's not just about oil and it's not just about high fiber. It's everything that we eat. It's everything that you do. So the fact that I might eat a piece of cake one day, or that you might eat a stir fry with a little bit of oil in it, when the rest of your diet is full of fruits and vegetables and high fibers and grains and beans, and you're not eating the dairy, and so you're getting, and then you're exercising, you're having healthy family relationships, you're managing the stress in your life. So when you're getting all of those things right, and that's what the blue zone people do, they're getting everything right. It's not just about the fact that they might be eating a little bit of oil, but right. There are populations that are eating no oil, and then we see the optimal health. And then when you see the heart attack survivor, then you start talking to those people who are very, very strict about it, right?
Yeah. So back to the frying pan. Why doesn't it burn? What do we just cook with nothing, or do you?
Yeah, what do you do? What are some
they're
oil free?
If you look at my recipes, you'll see them designed to be friendly in that oil-free environment. In other words, there are high water content veggies, onions, carrots, celery, bell peppers, and even mushrooms, and vegetables like that when you put them in that hot pan, the steam from those vegetables acts as kind of a buffer with the pan so they don't burn, right? So you'll see me do the high water content first, or with other vegetables, I cook them with the high water content vegetables. And then we're only adding water as needed to deglaze the pan. There's videos.
What kind of pan?
No,
Like
I use
it doesn't matter. Okay.
nonstick. I use cast iron. I use stainless steel. I use them all. It's just a matter. It's the technique that really makes that possible. And then you add your spices, your garlic, your cumin, and those things towards the end of that sauté, and then deglaze your pan and go on with the cooking. You can Google me and you'll see videos of me doing it, I think, online.
Yeah. So you just don't, I mean, if I wanted to cook non-high water vegetables, is it almost like, okay, well, don't at least start with the high water ones always, but
I will steam them first, like broccoli. If I'm only cooking broccoli, I may not worry so much about whether I'm stir frying it and sautéing it in that kind of environment. But you might steam them first. You might roast them first instead. Okay. You might start with a little bit of water and let that water cook out so that it has the opportunity to caramelize. The caramelization is the flavor that we're looking for. Otherwise, we could just braise everything in liquid.
Yeah.
I am not a cook, Del, just so you know. So I'm sitting here going, what does that mean to deglaze a pan?
Yeah. Who's he talking to?
I'm probably the least knowledgeable about all the thousands and thousands of people listening. So.
What's this guy talking about? How dare he? So when you cook, and this is deglazing is a classic French term. So when you cook, even with oil, you'll see like these brown things that are happening in the bottom of your pan. Well, that's all flavor. And so to deglaze it, you add a little bit of liquid to the pan. Now, in some French cooking, it might be red or white wine, it might be broth, it might be water. But you deglaze, and it pulls all that flavor up off of the pan and back into the product.
Ah, okay. Thank you. So in terms of low fat, so you use water instead of oil when you're walking or roasting. Is that right?
Mm-hmm.
Yahtzee mentioned veggie broth, and veggie broth does have a lot of times palm oil in it. Do you use spices and make your own broth that doesn't have any?
You can make your own broth, and you can find it without oil. If you look, you can find low fat or fat free broth pretty easily anymore. So that one's easy.
What do you use to substitute some thickeners for like low fat? I know I saw you make or talk about a cashew gravy that you make that you then added cauliflower and took a lot of the cashews off. Can you share some recipes that you might have defatted?
Well, I make a cheese sauce which is similar to the cauliflower sauce. So I boil potatoes and red pepper and onion and raw cashews, and the original version of this recipe had a cup of oil and then a cup of cashews. So I got it down to like 3 tablespoons of cashews, a little bit of tahini, and no oil. But you boil those things together, then you puree them. And when you puree the potatoes, it creates this really silky texture. You add some nutritional yeast and salt, and you've got a cheese sauce. So I make macaroni and cheese with that. I've made quesadillas with that. I've made queso and all kinds of... I call it the Velveeta of plant-based cooking, because if you've ever seen Velveeta, they have 100,000 recipes they do with that one block of, quote, cheese, right? And so it's the same, it's just like that. And the same thing with the bechamel sauce. You can take cauliflower. I discovered it quite by accident. I was making a roasted cauliflower bisque once, and I roasted my cauliflower and I pureed it, and it was creamy and full of flavor. And I thought, well, what happens when you add thyme and basil and a little nutritional yeast to that? It's delicious. You could add mushrooms to that and make a mushroom cream sauce. So I've got a lot of sauces like that take all the fat out but still give you the flavor.
So you're using cauliflower and potatoes, I can see, for the thickeners, and which is what cashews normally is used for, because cashews, the taste of it is not so much, but it's the smoothness of it.
In that case, it's a little bit of that smoothness, yeah. And I have made a cashew gravy that I serve. I make an oven-fried tofu, oil-free, and I make it with... My mom used to make a smothered chicken, fried chicken. So she took the fried chicken, took it out, and then using the drippings in the bottom of the pan, whisked in some flour and milk with that, and made what they call a milk or a pan gravy. Threw the chicken back in on top of that and threw it back in the oven. My cashew gravy tastes a lot like that. When you roast the cashews and puree them like that, it's really, really good.
That's right.
And are these in which cookbooks are they in, if the audience wants?
The bechamel sauce, the cauliflower sauce, you'll see it in Forks Over Knives, and I highly recommend the lasagna in the back of the book that it's made with. And then you'll see a version in China Study Quick and Easy. The cheese sauce is in the China Study Family Cookbook.
Oh, great.
Okay.
That's great.
So I want to ask a quick question about the cast iron skillets. The directions always say, you clean it off and you don't use soap, and then you put it back on the stove and you're supposed to put a little oil and move that around to heat it back up. You can do it in the oven, or how do you keep your cast irons healthy without oil?
I never oil. I never worry about it. And if my pan happens to get a little rust after I wash it, I simply wipe that out.
Yeah, just take some.
Just a quick wipe out, and then I go on with it, and it's fine.
A little rust never hurt anybody. Helps our iron count, doesn't it?
Well,
It's
yeah,
oxidized though.
It's oxidized. Yeah.
Okay. I guess I should take the rust off all my pet. No, I'm kidding.
Don't eat rust, please. I've definitely had a few scientists tell me that it's always better to be, if you're slightly low iron than slightly high iron, because iron will oxidize in the body, and then it's bad news bears from there.
Yeah.
Can I ask about this is for both. This is for both of us, Alexandra. This is kind of challenge, but not for you, Del. It would be a challenge for us. Neither one of us really are cooks. And if you could make 3 meals, or even just 2, but with each one 5 ingredients or less, I'm just so interested and intrigued by what flavors you would put together to make this meal and that meal, if we can do it with 5 ingredients or less. And of course, we'd also like to do it in 3 minutes or less, but we'll give you like 15 minutes we have to make the meals.
I made this today for lunch. I had some I call it almost instant peanut sauce in my freezer. Now peanut butter is one of those trigger foods for me, so I don't keep peanut butter in the house, but I do have the PB2, and you can find it without sugar. So it's just the dehydrated, defatted peanuts. I make a peanut sauce out of that. So it's the peanut reconstituted with soy sauce, ginger, garlic, and a little bit of sweetener, maybe a little bit of maple syrup or whatever. There's your sauce. I had rice in the freezer because I'm lazy, and I pull out a bag of frozen rice.
You're not lazy, you're batch cooking, right? Yes.
You're smart.
So I pulled out my frozen rice. I pulled out the peanut sauce. I pulled out some Brussels sprouts. I took an onion really quick. So I sauteed onion, threw the rice in there, threw the Brussels sprouts in there, put some liquid in there, and let that steam. Put a lid on it. Then I threw in some peanut sauce. I had lunch in about 12 minutes.
Okay,
that's great.
And
what about breakfast? Sauce. What kind of what do you?
I'm such an Ann Esselstyn, who you've probably heard of. She's got me convinced to eat oatmeal every day, and it's just the fiber, the cleansing that it does for your arteries and such. It's just and it's filling. So the goal is always to get filled up so that I'm not hungry by lunchtime. Sometimes I'll do a smoothie. I don't do this every day because they're sweet and anything sugar is kind of a trigger. But I like my oatmeal.
Do you put fruits on it, or do you just eat oatmeal?
I do. And my brother, my non-vegan, unhealthy brother, I was at his house this past year, and he eats oatmeal every day for breakfast. And he served me oatmeal one day, no sugar, barely any salt. But it's oatmeal on the table, pour some almond milk in it, had some raspberries on top of it, and then it's this small dollop of peanut butter. I was like, what is this, right? Because I've been straightforward. It's dates if I want sweetener, and cinnamon and oats and plant milk, and I'm done. I ate that, and I was like, oh, okay, I get it. It, right? It was good.
That's the only thing I've ever found that satiates me in oatmeal. Because usually if I start the morning with oatmeal and even if I put some chopped nuts and fruit, I am hungry within 45 minutes, which I don't mind being hungry, and eating again is just annoying because I would like to
Right.
get on with my day. And so if I eat something much more savory, like a tofu scramble and some whole grain toast and a little avocado, like I'm good for 4 hours. Haven't been able to. And so is it a lot of oatmeal? Because I'm like, I'm doing something wrong. Everybody loves to start their day with oatmeal, but I just feel deprived like an hour later.
I probably eat a big quantity. I probably start with a cup of dry oats, which is like 300 calories. So by the time you add that and throw in the berries in there, I've got a 400 or 500 calorie thing, and I'm good to go.
Okay.
But if you're eating the right foods and you're hungry in an hour, eat. Keep some.
Oh yeah, don't worry, I do. Yeah, I just don't want to be. I want to be doing.
Yeah.
But a little almond butter, or peanut butter, I have found, like, if I'm going to do something quick and it's going to be oatmeal, if I put that in, then I'm satiated long.
I'm guessing you're a high burner. You have a good metabolism, don't you?
I think so.
You exercise a lot.
Yeah, well, nothing like I used to, but yeah.
You've got a metabolism to make that happen. I'm a slow burner. I mean, and that's kind of the struggle too. But I can eat a meal and not eat the rest of the day sometimes, and that's a bad habit. But it's happened.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Do you have a second meal? Dotsie asked for 2, a second meal with.
Good job, girl. I need one more.
I want
to make something tonight.
I make and I can send you the recipe. I make a quick and easy. I think it's called easy peasy black bean chili or black bean soup. And literally, I open up a can of black beans. I throw some salsa in there, a little bit of refried black beans to give it some thickness, some garlic, some onion powder, some cumin, and let that cook, and I'm done. And some broth.
That sounds really good
really
and hearty.
And easy.
And then hummus is, oh my God, when don't I make hummus, right? You've got chickpeas, and if you want tahini and lemon juice and garlic and cumin and salt, and then you have 5 minutes, you have a meal, right? So hummus happens a lot.
There's oil in tahini. Do you just use a little bit?
No, there's you can buy oil-free tahini. There's fat in tahini, but there's not oil. So if you should buy it, it should say sesame seeds as the ingredient.
Right.
If it says oil, then you don't want to buy that.
I guess it's the fat.
You can leave out the tahini too. I use in probably 6 servings, maybe 2 tablespoons of tahini. So how much am I getting per serving? A teaspoon per serving.
Yeah, but then you don't want to leave out that calcium, because that is the highest amount of calcium of like any food. And for people moving away from dairy, tahini, sesame seeds all day long for your calcium. Yeah.
I was going to say there's a couple of meals there, but soups are the quickest thing. So vegetable broth and broccoli and garlic and onion and a little bit of thyme, and then and almond milk, and cook that, and then puree it, and you have a broccoli bisque. Some of those things are so simple and so straight. It gets easy if you think about it.
You talked about quite a few herbs and spices. What are your favorites to add, especially if you're in forks? I don't know. I know Forks Over Knives and China Study do a lot of their low fat, no oil, right? But what about salt? So if it restricts salt, what do you use to make a meal tasty?
Well, I don't change my recipes to adjust for salt. And here's why. If you're eating a no salt diet, if you've been told to give up salt, what you have to do is let yourself go through the 21 to 28 day period salt free. Your taste buds down regulate. Okay, that neuroadaptation is something that humans have done since the beginning of time, because food scarcity is a thing, right? So when you get rid of that taste for salt, it gets pretty easy. Even the slightest salt tastes salty. So I've never really, and then all of my recipes, it's my spice thing is packed full. There's probably 25 or 26, 27 different kinds of herbs and spices in there that I use every day.
Any favorites? Which ones would you say the basics are that every...
Basil, cumin, garlic, onion powder, thyme, and rosemary.
Okay, great.
So thyme and rosemary take you in a European kind of flavoring. Cumin gives you the Middle Eastern or the Latin flavors, and then basil goes everywhere. So you need Thai basil, Italian basil, happy basil.
I saw on your Facebook page, you posted something that you said, this blows my mind, how to keep an avocado fresh. And it was, you put an avocado in cold water and it will last for something
Did,
like
did you
weeks.
follow that discussion though? People who, I mean, everybody had a different kind of thought on. Some said it was too slimy, and some said, "Oh yes, it works." And I still haven't done it because I'm like, I mean, when does an
Opened or whole? Like
I
when
put
you
a
already
whole
opened it?
avocado and so put it down in water, and it won't go bad. Which is basically all you're doing is keeping it from oxidizing.
Right.
So do you have any other tips? Like I didn't know till not too long ago that if you put lettuce in water like that, it will stay much longer too. Like as if you've got a little bouquet in your refrigerator, it keeps
You do that with your herbs too. Yeah. So take your herbs. Matter of fact, I did a test run recently because I'm going to teach a spice class sometime later in the year, where I took parsley and I cut off the little bottoms of it, stuck it down in water, and put it right there on the counter. Right. And this is 2 weeks ago. Every day I change the water and rinse off the parsley a little bit. It's still usable. So that works for a lot of your fresh herbs. Cilantro, parsley, whatever. You just put them in that little bit of water. Traditionally, they say to put a plastic bag over it so that it keeps the moisture in and stuff like that. But that's one tip. Freezing herbs and spices is another one in ice trays. Then you just throw them into whatever you're going to use them in. So that's another one if you don't use a lot of fresh herbs.
when you say ice trays, you
Oh,
put
wow.
water.
Yeah, so you can chop up your herb or whatever it is, put it in a tray, and then pour water over it and let that freeze. Then put them into a little baggie, and then you have a little dollop of flavor whenever you want it.
And then just dump it on the pan, and the water obviously is working for the moisture. And oh, that
Right.
is crazy.
Right.
That is a fun tip. What about, you mentioned your that you use almond milk in your broccoli bisque. We're so curious about the variety of different plant milks and what is good for what. So almond milk and broccoli bisque, we got that. What about cashew milk or flax milk or hemp milk or oat milk? What's best for what?
I'm kind of a one milk guy. I use almond milk for just about everything. Though recently, and I've been working on my own sense of being a better steward of our earth. I've been looking. I bought a sack, a milk sack they call them, to make my own oat milk, and I haven't tried it yet, so I can get back to you. But it's almonds are water intensive, and cashews are water intensive. But oats we grow in Ohio, right? So I can go to my farmer's market and buy oats and make my own oat milk. I just haven't tried it for the flavor yet, but people I know that make it love it.
Yeah, oh, that's good. That's the reason why we don't drink almond milk either, is because we're in California where it's so dry.
Yeah.
Few almond farms, but oat milk is good. Dotsie, you drink oat milk, right?
Yes, I love it. And I find almond milk, I mean, it's a little bit waterier than some of the others, especially waterier than soy milk. So I was curious about baking because it seems so watery in baking. Do you do soy milk in bake, or you use almond milk?
I still use I still use
wow.
the almond milk. I haven't
Okay.
changed out from that.
Oh,
You know, I love baking more than cooking, so it's sort of an instinctive thing for me to feel a batter and know what it needs or what to do with it.
right.
But I didn't change recipes much when switching from, because I used to do soy milk, but then I was doing too much soy. And I'm not anti-soy, but I was doing way too much soy, and I was doing a soy protein that was isolated soy, and it's just not healthy. So I switched over to the almond milk for that reason. Yeah, but I used to make my own soy milk. So that's another one, because
Yeah.
Ohio is the fourth largest producer of soybeans in the country and one of the top ones in the world. So we got soybeans everywhere, right?
So do you try and squish out just like the oats? You do some, I mean, how do you
Yeah,
do
you take your oats that goes into a blender and you puree all that, then you put it in the sack and strain it so all of the solids stay in the sack, and then you have the oat milk. And then you can season that if you want a pinch of something sweet, or you can add a date in there with your milk. for something sweet, then you've got an easy one. But it's
Or
easy.
chocolate. No.
And the way the cost is the crazy thing. The difference in cost and, of course, packaging. I mean, you're talking pennies on the dollar to make your own milk.
And with soy milk too, is it the same idea?
I used to make soy milk and tofu. You can make I made a gallon of soy milk, and this is back in the 90s when I was still making it, for 20 cents food cost.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah.
What about eggs? Oh, I want to ask about to follow up on Dotsie's question about plant milks. What about plant butters?
I don't use any of them, although I have on my list. I have a list of, and we're going to do some videos about it, about trying out some of these newfangled things. So I don't do any of the plant butters because it's just full of fat. But I saw a recipe, and Forks Over Knives had it on their website for corn butter. So you take whole corn and you put it into a blender and you blend that, and then you strain it, and then you put it onto the stove with a little bit of maybe arrowroot or tapioca starch and a little bit of nutritional yeast, and cook it until it thickens. And one of my coworkers swears by it. Toss that with your rice so that you have that just mouth feel that you want, right? And it's supposedly really good.
Oh, wow. That's terrific. I know we have some chefs listening because some of my friends have really been like, you need to talk more about food. So here we are.
I'm here all day.
Okay, I have a question about eggs and baking because I know that eggs are used for different reasons in baking. And so when you don't use the egg, you need to use different substitutes. Can you share with us when you use flax, for example, or when you...
Yeah, when you want a binder. So eggs do a couple of things. They can help leaven your product, and they can act as a binder. So when you want a binder, flax eggs are really good. There's the commercial brand Energy Egg Replacer, which is mostly tapioca starch. But tapioca starch itself makes a good binder because it's got that gelatinous feel to it that tends to hold things together. You see it in gluten-free baking a lot. But you're seeing now the whole aquafaba trend, taking chickpea broth and cooking it down and then whipping it, and so you can make egg whites. And I see people making meringue out of it. I see them making macaron, which is the French cookie that's mostly egg whites and sugar, out of bean broth, which it makes me crazy. I'm like, okay, but whatever. And it works. So it works really well. When I still had my bakery, I got rid of the eggs. I created my own formulas for cakes. I did not do an egg replacer. I used applesauce most of the time because the pectin in applesauce keeps the gluten from developing. So when you cut back on the fat, you can still not have that over chew that you want that you don't want in a cake. Excuse me if I get too technical, but you want a tender cake crumb, so so applesauce works really well for that. But I didn't use an egg replacer. A little more baking powder to make up for the leavening, and that was about it.
Yeah. And bananas, I've heard applesauce and bananas. No.
Yeah, I don't use the bananas as much. You can, but yeah, I mostly applesauce and then flaxseed if I want something, or probably my two biggest.
When you do a flax egg, is it just so if some people don't know, because I didn't till like last year, it is 1 tablespoon of flaxseed meal and 2 tablespoons of water, and you whisk it together and just let it sit for 5 minutes or so. Mm-hmm. Is that how you do it? Okay.
I tend to do it, throw it in my little blender. Yeah, but yeah, same thing.
Okay. So I got to stick on baking because I love a dry British scone. Like I don't want any moisture in it like they do in America. I want and so
that should be easy to get in a lot of bakeries. A dry scone.
No, but here they always put, it's like too sweet, or they put too much, I don't know what it makes it moist and
right.
It's
too much
not
cake.
A scone.
Yeah.
It's like a cake scone, and
yeah, you make a traditional scone in the same way. If you do you ever had Irish soda bread? Irish soda bread's one step away from a scone, in my opinion. Scones are a little bit sweetener, but Irish soda bread, it's that whole wheat flour and the buttermilk, and then your baking soda, and it's about it, right? And so you can do the same thing to get a scone. You're baking it in the little triangular pieces, and throwing in your currants or your raisins or whatever, and maybe a little bit of vanilla, and it's got something similar. So it's the
No
ratio.
buttermilk though. So what do you use?
Well, you take almond milk or soy milk or any of those milks and throw a little bit of lemon juice in it, and it curdles, like it creates a sort of a buttermilk replacement.
Okay.
Yeah, like a cup of almond milk and maybe a teaspoon of either vinegar or lemon juice or something like that gives you a buttermilk.
That's like that. So the scones, my brain goes, oh yeah, those would be not needing a lot of fat anyway because you want them dry. But how about like a muffin, right? Those are chewy, ooey, gooey in more than scones anyway. And I feel like traditionally they have quite a bit of fat in them. How do you make a great muffin?
That's where the applesauce comes in.
Ah, okay.
That's where your applesauce, yeah.
And you're replacing the butter. Like, let's say you're going to have a traditional recipe that's not plant-based and you want to replace, tell us how to replace the things that we're going to see in Southern Living cookbook for a muffin.
So for,
style.
yeah, for, if you have a stick of butter, you would replace, that's a half a cup. A stick of butter you replace with a half a cup of applesauce. It's a 1-for-1 replacement.
Easy.
Yeah. 3 tablespoons for an egg. 3 tablespoons of applesauce.
Okay.
And what about black bean brownies? I've heard, I don't know if I've eaten them, but I've heard you speak of them. And do the beans give that smoothness that you're looking for?
Yeah. Chef AJ was the first one she came and did a conference at the Wellness Forum, and I watched her make this German chocolate thing and this black bean brownie thing. And I was like, no. But I ate it, and I was like, yeah. Black bean brownie recipe is based on hers, and oh my gosh, it's kind of insane how that works. It gives it the density that you want in a brownie is what the black beans do. And then I learned blondies, so using white beans.
Ooh, cool.
Nice. And are those in any of your cookbooks?
No, I stay so far away from desserts. Oh, wait a minute. Blondies might be in the China Study family. I limit desserts just because when you write a cookbook, you got to test the food, right? So I'll never forget when I did the China Study Quick and Easy, there was a batch, I made these German chocolate cookies for it, no-bake cookies. And, the came time to make take the picture, and there's a batch of cookies there, and the camera guy leaves, and there's still the cookies sitting there, and then there's me.
Yeah.
So I got to limit the desserts.
So that actually brings me on. I did want to know about how a cookbook seems like such an intensive thing, choosing the recipes, practicing the recipes. How do you avoid stealing other people's recipes? Or I shouldn't say, I don't know what kind of rules are there? Because there are definitely rules when you write a book.
Well, I think that, there's a lot of appropriation that happens in cooking because we've all made bolognese sauce, right? And there's a classic sense of what a bolognese sauce is, but what makes it yours is how you approach it. So I made a lentil bolognese once. I was like, well, let's get rid of the meat. I don't want the meat, and I'm not going to cook it with the butter, and I'm not going to add the cream or anything like that. But so I find these other ways to do it, and then I adjust the seasonings to my taste. So, and my mother taught me that. I've never watched her cook a recipe ever as it's written. Right, so it's always about what she wanted the flavor to be, and I learned how to cook like that. So I'm always adapting things to I was watching some woman today make these little these little tahini and dates and oats, and she made a cookie out of them. And I was like, well, that looks good. There's only 3 ingredients, but we're going to add a couple of things to that, right, to make it something that I would want to eat. And that's kind of how you approach it.
It's like true talent.
And then does it take, all right, let's just take one recipe, maybe those cookies or one recipe. How many tries does it take? Do you do it just yourself at home at night and then go in and do it for 6? Or do you make it for always how many is going to be in the cookbook?
There are recipes that I wrote without testing.
That is true talent.
Well, and that's what 33 years of cooking does, right? So when I think about making split pea soup, I can tell you off the top of my head, there's going to be onions and carrots and celery, and I like thyme and rosemary in my split pea soup, and vegetable broth and salt and pepper, and I'm good to go. Right. So there's also formulas running around in my head for how much I'm going to, how much to make what. So a stir fry, if I'm going to make stir fried rice, I'm probably going to use 2 cups of cooked rice. I'm going to use half of an onion, a diced carrot, and then maybe a third of a cup of my Chinese brown sauce, and off we go, and whatever vegetables I want. So, for me, a lot of that's happening in my head. And then watching a recipe evolve from what might have been originally a German chocolate no-bake that ends up being this chocolate peanut butter thing over here is just sort of like, that's kind of all what happens here. And, again, I probably, with my food issues, should be the last person to cook. I really should be locked in a room somewhere where they throw lettuce leaves at me until I get over it, all right? But I'm always thinking, and I'm sitting here watching these YouTubers and people on YouTube, and I'm going, no, I'm not going to do it like that. We're going to do it like this. Oh, I want to try that, and I might do it like this. So that's, unfortunately, and luckily I get paid to do it, but that's what I'm doing most of the day.
Yeah.
When I can't sleep at night, it's YouTube and TikTok and all that craziness.
Cooking
So
stuff.
do you have people to whom you give your, okay, I made this and I need, it's not my, here, you take it because I need to do round 2 of this same one and add more time?
I've gotten in trouble with friends before because ultimately it has to make me happy. And I remember I did one of my cookbooks. I sent out recipes to 25 people and said, okay, here. And I sent them a form of what I was looking for.
Oh.
And man, 2/3 of the time they were like, well, we didn't really like the sweet potatoes, so we didn't use that. And I'm like, ugh. Right?
They were your test cooks.
My testers, yeah.
I see. So you always have test cooks.
I don't anymore now. I don't.
Oh.
I trust this taste bud to do what it wants to do. Yeah.
Yeah.
Interesting. Anything
right.
else about cookbooks you want to tell us about behind the scenes?
It's a long and tedious process. It's not a glamour job at all. If people tell you that, I'm lucky in that I have the head for it, that I have the experience of doing it. But to sit down and to write a cookbook, there's the writing, there's the rewriting. There's the rewriting, there's the editors that are going to try and change your words where you have to argue about how you want to say something. There's what the publisher has as their house style versus how you write and trying to maintain your own voice. There's the science of it, the recipe order, the ingredient order, how to make recipes and instructions come out clearly so that the public knows what you're saying in your head and what you're seeing in your head. It's And then, when you're tired, you're darn tired of German chocolate no-bake cookies, you got a camera guy showing up to take pictures of it, and you got to make it one more time.
One more time.
Yeah, so there are recipes. I was just looking because I'm putting together our batch cooking class that we're doing, the project I'm working on. We're doing 4 different ones a year, so 4 seasonal menus. And so today I was going through the Folks Overnight cooking book and going, I forgot about that. And, and that's the way it is. People are like, what about that one recipe? I'm like, I don't remember it. It was, it was 10 years ago, which means it was 11 years ago when I wrote it. Yeah. So, you kind of get to that place where you're burned out on things. But I was looking today going, I haven't made that forever. I want that.
Yeah. I have a last question about us volume eaters out there. You said you are. I'm definitely a volume eater. And so I have discovered some fun trade outs. So I'm going to start with one, and then I'd like 2 or 3 from you because you're the chef, you're the expert. So mashed potatoes, cauli mashed potatoes, half cauliflower or 3/4 cauliflower and quarter mash, and then you can eat a whole lot and it doesn't fill you up too much, and you can just really, I don't know, if I feel so much more satiated with there's more volume. That's just how I am. What are some other trade outs that people can?
Parsnip mashed potatoes are one of my favorites. The parsnips give you a whole new flavor, and then putting white beans in with your potatoes if you want something.
Fiber.
When you get that fiber and that filling thing going. So anything like that. Broccoli mashed potatoes, roasted garlic mashed potatoes.
Definitely the roasted garlic. Any other category besides the mashed potato category where you've got some tricks?
I eat a lot of salads, but I'm always putting beans in my salads to make them a meal, to make them filling. So that's an easy one. When I want dessert, sometimes I'll take pineapple and just a drizzle of maple syrup or something and grill that in a pan. Or if it's in the summer, I'll grill it.
Wow.
There's nothing better than grilled pineapple for dessert. You don't need anything else,
Oh my
right? So
gosh, with a little
grilled
maple
fruit
syrup, I'm
is
dying.
yeah, grilled fruit is fruit on steroids. It just highlights all the natural flavors and juices and sweetnesses that are already there. So I love grilled fruit for that reason.
Do it in the pan too, or do you have to have an
Yeah, no,
actual
you can do it.
grill?
Do it in the pan. Yeah,
Okay.
or throw it in the oven or in the broiler or the toaster oven or whatever you want to do.
Oh,
Um,
wow.
yeah. And then if you really don't like to cook, I just got someone insisted that they buy me an instant pot, and I've had it 2 years, and I just put it to work this year, and I'll never bake potatoes the old way ever again, because they are moist and they're 12 minutes.
So
So
what do? Just put the whole potato in there and turn
you
the
put
thing
the whole
on? Or-
potato in, a little bit of water in the bottom of it, turn it on for
Yeah.
12 minutes on high, let it come up to pressure, and let it come down to pressure, and oh my God, it's crazy.
Yeah, I've heard you call yourself a Luddite when it comes to kitchen tools. But I know Dotsie has an air fryer that she loves.
I just got the air fryer and my oven fried tofu. If you want a crispy potato or crispy tofu, air fryer is your thing. But I didn't have one for the longest time because in a commercial kitchen, I had a convection oven, which is all an air fryer is.
Yeah.
It has the fan that makes things happen. So I was like, I don't need an air fryer. Give me a convection oven.
What do you panko the tofu with so that it comes out of the air fryer crispy? Because when
One
I
of my
just do tofu, it's
Biggest
crispy when it-
favorite coating. You want 3 tablespoons of almond flour. If you want to cut back on the fat, you can go half cornmeal. But almond flour, 3 tablespoons nutritional yeast. I do about a tablespoon of garlic powder and a teaspoon of salt. That used to be flour and nutritional yeast and garlic with oil to make what was like my mama's fried chicken. When we got rid of the oil, the dish goes down by 200, 300 calories.
Okay, and just coat the tofu in that, and then yeah.
You bake it.
Okay. Do you air fry it on 400?
375.
Okay. That sounds so easy. I can do that. There's some things in here
Well,
that I can actually do.
And that little coating I just gave you is also my Parmesan cheese substitute. So when I had lunch today, I cooked some Brussels sprouts and sprinkled some of that on my Brussels sprouts.
Yeah.
Oh, yay. That's so good. So tell us about what we mentioned a little bit in the intro, and what you've mentioned a little in this discussion. It sounds like you're excited about the upcoming, you have your Facebook group. Tell us a little bit more about that. And I understand you yourself have gotten a lot of support and have lost 75 pounds.
I've lost 80 pounds now since last September. And this group has been great. I have 2 weight loss coaches. As I always tell people, I'm a lot to manage, but I have a friend who works with me on a daily basis, and I have a weight loss coach that I hired through the Wellness Forum, and they've been great. But the group support and the encouragement that you get from that group has been wonderful. They're highly supportive, highly positive people. They don't criticize each other. They try to lift each other up, and people come into that group, and they're like, oh, this is sanctuary, right? So you just don't get that everywhere, and I'm really proud of that. We've managed to maintain that. So we do monthly challenges, like weight loss challenges, or 30 days, and people are losing weight on our challenges, and we ask questions every day. What are you doing today for yourself? What was your exercise like today? Did you drink enough water? How's the support going? How's your stress? How are you managing? To get them thinking about all of those things that make a difference. So that's a big one. But we're getting ready to introduce this batch cooking class, because people, when they go plant-based, are like, what do I do? What do I cook? What do I eat? And so we've got this series. It's a 6 weeks long class starting the end of March, and you'll cook together with me. We put menus together, and then I guide you through it like you've never cooked before. So if you need that kind of guidance and support, I'm going to hold your hand the entire way. I slow down so that we can go at your pace. I give you all the tools you need to get everything set up right. Getting your kitchen. People are surprised. The test group we just did was like, so I never thought that cleaning and organizing my kitchen would make a difference. It did. I never thought that doing mise en place, doing that 1 hour of chopping the night before, would make this so much easier. It does. So you're giving them skills to take with them, and then showing them how to I'm not one who will sit and make the same thing the same way ever twice. So showing them how to play with their food. So we take a cheese sauce. I show them the quesadilla. I show them the grilled cheese. I show them fajitas, whatever. All these different ways to do things. 5 ways I'm using a baked potato, right? So you're getting a lot out of this, and hopefully the skills that you need and the confidence that you need at the end of it to do this on your own.
Yeah.
Oh,
And did you say it's going to be on Saturdays? So it's end of March.
The cooking is Saturdays. I think it's March 29th. It starts on a Saturday. You start on a Monday, and on Tuesday we have Q&A. So you can sit there and ask all your questions like, I can't have gluten, what do I do here? I hate beans, what do I do here? All those kinds of questions. Wednesday you organize your kitchen. Thursday you shop. Friday you do your mise en place. Saturday we cook.
Oh, okay.
Oh,
I'm
and you all
signing
cook
up.
together.
And we all cook together. And we're doing a whole menu, 4 or 5 recipes. Takes about an hour and a half if you do it the way I show you to do it. So we have a cooking outline that shows you, here's what we're going to do first, here's what we're going to do second, and why? Because we want to fill up all those times when you're sitting around waiting for nothing to happen, right? To fill up your time and get you in and out of the kitchen in less than 3 hours with the kitchen cleaned.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Okay.
I have a friend, Leslie, she actually lives in Columbus, and that's where you are, right?
Mm-hmm.
And she wanted me to ask you if you teach private cooking lessons to folks.
I haven't since the pandemic, and then last year I had my own health scare, and I'm getting back from that. But I would do private cooking classes again at some point. Yeah.
Or online private
We could do them.
cooking?
Certainly do them through Zoom for sure. Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
good. Another option too. So we've got the Facebook group Chef Del's Diet Days, which you can find just by Googling that. And how do they sign up for your batch cooking class? Is that?
It's not up online yet. We're putting the e-commerce platform together now, but it'll be up in the next couple of weeks where you'll be able to go online and sign up. If you go to nutritionstudies.org, you can find us there.
So this is through the Forks
by the
Over
time
Knives
it's theirs.
China Study.
This is through, they're separate. So through CNS, which is the T. Colin Campbell Center for Nutrition Studies, it's through that organization.
Okay, cool.
Okay.
Great.
Nutrition
They're my
Studies.
current bosses.
I have one more question before we go. I know you said that cookbooks are, they're a lot of work. Do you have any cookbook in you at all that you dream of? Oh, three books. Can you tell us?
I have 4 books, which I might combine into 3. I've been journaling. It's one of the things I've been doing to relate to my weight loss. And my boss thinks that should be a book because she's been reading it. Because it's that honesty that you put out there. So I might do it as a book, and I might do it with recipes. But I've got a tofu cookbook. I've had, Forks Over Knives wasn't big on soy when I was writing that cookbook. So all of my years of tofu recipes are sitting there collecting dust. So I have a tofu cookbook ready to go. And then I've been working on I want to do, I even want to say this because I don't want someone to steal it. I want to do a cooking for one, what I call table for one. For the single person like me because I would eat a piece of healthy cake, but I can't make a whole cake. I can't have that in my house.
Nobody can really.
Right. I want a piece of cornbread, but I don't want a pan of cornbread. So things like that I think that you can do to make life enjoyable, and like you're not losing out just because you're single and cooking for you. So that's another one. And then I'm always researching recipes, and they just sit there and are collecting into a pile.
Wow, those all sound fantastic. You
Excited
might
for
make
all
a
of
cook
them.
out of me, Chef Del.
Take the batch cooking with me. Let's do it. I'm in.
We have so much fun, and there's a social media network that we're creating for that, so that you can get in there with your other attendees and see what ideas they have and what they're doing and what questions they have and all of that. So it's a pretty fun. I feel like a lucky guy because I'm having a lot of fun doing it.
Sounds amazing, and people get to spend more time with you, which also sounds amazing. So thank you for the time that you shared with us.
Well, thank you. You guys are great. I hope you have me back again.
You're so enjoyable. I learned so much. This was a hoot, and you're a beauty. Love it, love it, love it. Thanks for sharing all the things you did too, just about the weight loss journey and the connection inside all of us that we are working to bring together.
Well, thank you guys for doing what you do. I want to look at your website some more because I like what I'm seeing.
Please do. Hey, folks, Okay, back by very popular demand is our plant-powered plate fridge magnet, which you are going to receive for free if you leave us a rating and a review on whatever platform you're listening to this podcast on. So here are the details. Just write your quick review. Does not need to be long, does not need to be a whole story. Just be honest and speak from the heart. Then take a quick screenshot of the review you wrote and email it to us at podcast@switchforgood.org. That's podcast@switchforgood.org. And include your mailing address so we can send you a power plate. We are doing this because the more reviews we garner, the higher we go in search results, which means more folks will learn about our podcast. So the power is in your hands. Leave us a review and zoom, your power plate arrives at your doorstep.
So thank you so much for tuning in today. If we helped you in any way, then click the subscribe button and let's keep hanging out together. We have so much more to share with you.
And if you need more information on actually making the switch for good, please visit us at switchforgood.org for loads of info. And you can subscribe to our mailing list where you will receive all sorts of super cool gifts, discount codes to our very fave dairy-free products, and a lifetime of powerful health tips.
So join us on the journey to switch for good. This is the future.